The truth is that the average attention span is now 8 seconds, which is less than a goldfish. So basically, it used to be that you would have maybe a 30-second elevator speech, but we don't even have that anymore. So it's got to be abstracted. Whatever that idea is has to be abstracted into something that's a very short sound bite or visual bite or something that you hear, okay? In the case of exactly like Aflac, their biggest problem was that nobody could remember the name of the company. So having a duck quack the name over and over and over again, Aflac, 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 in a way that's humorous, okay? It's as my old boss once said to me, you have to throw a pie in somebody's face to get their attention, and then you have to sell them on the whipped cream. So you have to sell them on the whipped cream. It's not enough to get attention. And I think in the universe that we live in now, where we have 5,000 to 7,000 messages a day being thrown at us, like cooked spaghetti, only a few are going to stick to the wall. So how are you going to have them stick onto your conscious brain when there's so much out there? You have to be incredibly, incredibly disruptive. You have to be incredibly entertaining. And that old adage of, who cares, so what, what's in it for me? And you better make that quick. And it takes a long time to write a short soundbite. I think each of the campaigns that I've created in some way are going to kind of, stick to your brain or be an earworm. When I wrote the Toys R Us song, I mean, basically the Toys R Us song is simply a bunch of assets about the company. I don't want to grow up. I'm a Toys R Us kid. There's a million toys at Toys R Us. From bikes to trains to video. I'm basically just giving you a laundry list of what's on the strategy statement. But when you sing it, a famous jingle writer once said, the greatest thing about, putting it into a jingle is you can't hum the announcer. You will remember something if it's in a tuneful kind of way, and it's a bit of an earworm you can't get out of your brain. And so you are forced to remember the lyrics, and when you remember the lyrics, you're remembering the benefits. So what I try to do in all the advertising that we create is figure out what is the one thing that I really want to say. In this case, it was assets about the store, about Toys R Us. In the case of Aflac, it was remembering the name Aflac. I have to know what it is that I need to do, just one thing, and then figure out a way to do it that's incredibly entertaining. And so for me, I've been defined by my campaigns because they're hopefully incredibly entertaining. They either really make you laugh, they make you tap your feet, or they make you cry, like Kodak ads. You have to understand the medium that you're advertising for, but that brand persona, and I believe that the greatest brands do more than sell assets, they actually play a role in our lives. Kodak was never about selling beautiful film, it was about capturing memories. People have so little time, and they're so dissociated from human elements by technology, that the best brands find ways to connect people and make them feel like they're worth something, that they're doing something, by buying into what that brand is about. Everybody said that radio was on the out. You know what? Radio is more successful than ever, except we put it in a medium, we call it podcast now, so people can listen whenever they want to listen. The biggest problem that people are having is, how do I monetize that? This is sort of that problem that is ongoing, and everybody is struggling with it, and the way it works for advertising agencies is clients very often don't know how to pay us. And we're putting all this work into it, and it's not like television where we know how many viewers are going to be watching Law and Order that evening. So it becomes a very tricky thing because the ad business is incredibly work intensified. But certain areas, because they can't be monetized yet, don't necessarily pay, I think, what they could be paying. I was not working during the Mad Men era, that was kind of before my time. But when I did get into the ad business, it was dominated by men, there's no question about it. And even when I started my own agency in 1997, it was like 2 women starting their own agency, and one that grew to be one of the fastest growing in the United States was completely unheard of, really. I was very fortunate. I did not experience discrimination. One of my first bosses was, he's the famous author James Patterson, but at that time he was Jim, my creative director, and he was completely gender blind. And then I went to Wells Rich, which was Mary Lawrence, and of course that had been a matriarchal agency business. And so when I created my own, I didn't have the experience of being, bashed because I was a woman. So I was very fortunate. But I really made it my business when I created the agency with Robin Koval, who was my business partner and co-writer on all my books. that we were going to make sure that we were going to do everything the opposite of the mad men were going to do. We were going to be the mad women who were going to run things in a very different type of culture. And it turned out to be the right one. It turned out to be that nice was a much more powerful word than anything else, when it came to advertising, because our attrition rate was so low, and everybody in the world wanted to work there, and everybody worked their tails off because it was a fun, glorious place to work, and we grew and grew and grew, I think, largely because of that. Robin and I always like to write books that we feel have counterintuitive wisdom. We wrote The Power of Nice several years ago because everybody in the marketing world was saying it's all about being cutthroat and mean, and we're going, actually, it's not. If you look at the great leaders in companies, and we interviewed a lot of them, nice was sort of that secret sauce, and they didn't want to tell anybody because a lot of them felt that, oh, it would make me look weak. Nice is not being a doormat and filling everybody's champagne glass. It's getting what you want, but doing it in a way that engages other people and supports other people. We wrote The Power of Small because everybody talks about the big picture. But you know what? I always say I'm not a forest person, I'm a leaf person. It is really more important. A lot of people have big, magnanimous, beautiful ideas, bold, brazen ideas, but they don't follow up with the details, and that's how a lot of companies and a lot of projects fall short. And that's leadership to me, is about letting your people know that the details are as important as whatever that idea is. And the factor is, with Grit, I was just so sick of hearing about YouTube sensations and stardom is a selfie away, and I watched The Biggest Loser, and that person lost 40 pounds between commercial breaks, and nobody bothered to see the fine print that said that it took them a year and a half of diet and exercise and sweat equity to get there. I'm going, wait a second, that isn't how it happens. It's not about that it factor, being born brilliant or beautiful. That's a cop-out to be able to say, well, that person did it because they had the it factor. You know what? They didn't. They had, and we call it the grit factor. And the components for grit are guts, resilience, initiative, tenacity. There, I've done it as an acronym because I'm an ad lady.